All right, so when Jackson came to office, he'd been working for years for the Native Kickout. After his election, he did what he wanted, and he signed the Indian Removal Act in 1830. Whoops. And if you want to know more about the Indian Removal Act of 1830, there you go. Now, the Indian Removal Act, one of the first ways it was really used was the Cherokee removal in Georgia, and this is what the forcible removal of the Cherokees was what was known as the Trail of Tears. So one of the first ways the Indian Removal Act was used was with the Trail of Tears and the removal of Cherokee Indians out of Georgia. And if you want to know more about the Trail of Tears, there you go. There you go again! Now, after the War of 1812, the U.S. government implemented new tariffs in 1916, 1928, and 1932 in an effort to aid northern businesses. So after the War of 1812, the U.S. government implemented new tariffs in 1916, 28, and 32 in an effort to aid northern businesses. Now the South said, heck no to those tariffs, because it raised prices on goods, and it meant the Brits could not pay as much for their cotton. So the South said, heck no to those tariffs, because it raised prices on goods, and the British wouldn't pay for their cotton anymore. So on November of 1828, there's a picture of the Supreme Court here, but it should be South Carolina. South Carolina declares this law null and void, and stated that if the U.S. government tried to get the tax, the state of South Carolina would secede. So it's one of the first real threats of secession. So in November of 1828, South Carolina says, we are not going to follow this law. It is null and void. And states, if the U.S. government tries to come get that tax, we're going to secede. Now, Jackson tries to get a bill through Congress that allowed him to force payment, but it stalled. And the crisis ends with the Compromise Tariff of 1833. So Jackson tried to get a bill through Congress that would allow him to force payment, but the bill stalled, and the crisis ends with the Compromise of 1833. And if you want to know more about the nullification crisis, there she goes. Now, one of the only other things that is really big about the Jackson administration, Congress passed the charter for the Second Bank of the U.S. in 1816. Jackson opposed the Second Bank of the U.S. because he saw it as being for special interest and that it favored the rich. So he opposes the charter to the Second Bank of the U.S. because he thought it was full of special interests and it favored the rich. Now, in 1832, Congress voted to renew the charter, but Jackson vetoed it with the Second Bank supporters actually going and forming their own party called the Whig Party in response. So in 32, Congress voted to renew the charter of the Second Bank. Jackson vetoes it, and the Second Bank supporters, they actually go form their own political party called the Whigs. Now in 32, Jackson wins re-election by a landslide, and he withdraws federal funds from the bank, which really weakens the economy. So Jackson gets what he wants, he closes the bank, but it really weakens the economy.